It is an honor and a privilege for me to present the first senior sermon of 5781 here in the Women's League Seminary Synagogue at JTS. I'm especially aware of this privilege, knowing many of my colleagues will not be able to present from this room. And although unlike recent years, today we are unable to be together in person for these monumental moments in our training, nevertheless, I thank you for joining, and I look forward to when we can gather again for Words of Torah. This afternoon, I want us to explore the process of spiritual self-improvement. I'm sad to say that over the last 7 months, being in quarantine has occasionally brought out the worst in us, more often than not online or in markets, as politics and public health collided. I had my fair share of online interactions I'm not really proud of, where I let my concern for my own and my family's health lead me to say things that failed to acknowledge the humanity of others. I hadn't really noticed how caught up I was until I was having a cup of coffee and catching up with a friend one afternoon. My partner, Audrey, walked in the room, and I guess I was frowning while I was typing something because she said, "Are you arguing with someone on the internet again?" And to my own surprise, I responded, "No, actually I'm not." And this was kind of a shock for me, and made me realize that instead of acknowledging my anger and frustration about things that I couldn't control, such as postponing our wedding twice or 3 times, or being afraid of what could happen to family members or friends, and feeling isolated, I resorted to taking it out on other people who were likely resisting the new normal due to similar feelings of anger and frustration. Instead of meeting them with compassion, I met them with anger and hostility. During the high holiday services, our prayers can serve as mirrors for our souls, so we can incorporate the lessons within the prayers into our daily lives. This year on Yom Kippur, as we recited the 13 attributes of divine compassion, I was confronted by my failure to be erech apayim v'rav chesed ve'emet, slow to anger and abounding in kindness and truth. I've noticed that there's usually a lot of discussion about past wrongdoings around the time of the high holidays, but we rarely talk about how to keep from messing up initially, even though there's an entire corpus of Jewish literature dedicated to ethics and self-conduct, many building off of Moshe Cordevero's classic Tomer Devorah. Even though I started my quest for spiritual self-improvement about 2 years ago, I feel like I've just stepped through the door. However, unlike many journeys, this one is not about going out. It is one of turning in and taking a close look at ourselves. Although many aspects of our lives have changed recently, we have an unprecedented need to develop deeper relationships with God, ourselves, and other human beings through becoming closer resemblances of the image of God. Although this can be a painful and difficult process, it is also a chance to engage in an integral part of the sacred work of Tikkun Ha'olam, repairing the world. As the holidays ended, we began the Torah anew. And in Bereshit, our parsha this week, we find the story of creation, including the first human beings who represent the ideal state of being. It says there, Vayivra Elohim et ha'adam betzalmo, betzelem Elohim bara oto, zachar u'nekeva bara otam. God created the human being in their image. In the image of God they created it, male and female God created them. As Dr. Malila Hellner-Eshid, a noted scholar of the Zohar, explains the Kabbalistic interpretation of the verse, humanity, created in the image of God, is understood as the crown of creation, By virtue of their possessing a soul, a spark of divinity, human beings share something essential with the divine. Human beings are not merely a specific representation of the divine in a finite material world. Rather, they are responsible for the actualization of divinity in the world. The responsibility of actualizing divinity in the world suggests an active role on the part of human beings, rather than simply a passive likeness from having been created. Our actions are deeply tied to our being in the likeness of God. So if we want to learn how to better actualize divinity in this world, we can look at the first action taken by God at the very beginning of the Torah. Bereshit bara Elohim. In the beginning, God created. Hasidic master Moshe Chaim Ephraim of Sedalkov explains Bereshit bara Elohim, in the beginning God created, through the gematria, the number value, of the word Elohim, God, which is equal to that of Hateva, the nature. According to classical midrashic sources, the word Reshit is also Chokhmah, wisdom. This is to say that the hidden meaning of the word, of the verse, is with wisdom God created. The Blessed Holy One created the nature of the world. He continues, all that which is in the world is in the human being. Therefore, certainly the human, capable of intellect and having wisdom, is able to create for themselves a new nature and to change their nature from what it used to be. For example, if they were born with an angry or covetous nature, since they are capable of intellect, they are able to turn around, to change their nature, and to vanquish their anger. Then their words will be delivered pleasantly. When Moshe Chaim Ephraim states that humans possess wisdom, I do not believe he means the kind of wisdom you might learn from a book or a class. The wisdom we possess is the ability to know the secrets of our inner selves. Through exploring this personal naturescape, we become wise to our flaws and are thereby able to correct them. So we arrive at Tikkun Ha'olam. On a mystical level, this concept is about revealing and elevating sparks of divinity hidden in the world. Before, when I mentioned Moshe Chaim Ephraim's teaching, everything that is in the world is in the human, is an insight which I suggest hints towards the internal search for God as part of Tikkun Ha'olam. When we repair ourselves, we are making a small part of the world a better place. By elevating the divinity within our souls, we can take an ongoing step towards repairing the world. In order to recognize the divine aspects within, we must use wisdom to discern the state of our nature in each moment. I mentioned how the COVID-19 pandemic caused me to feel angry. Well, noticing the presence of anger allows us to search for its real cause, and by acknowledging it, we can let it pass without acting on it. Instead, we can start replacing it with chesed, which is the intersection of kindness, mercy, and love. When our capacity for chesed expands, our tendencies for anger or hate become tempered by kindness and love. As we progress in our relationship with God, we are able to recognize the spark of divinity which exists in all aspects of nature. And by doing so, how can we be anything but humble towards each other? How much better could we make the world if, rather than attacking each other out of fear and anger, we could acknowledge our state of nature and then approach each other with dignity and a willingness to compromise? I want to challenge each of us today to seize the opportunity to return to our beginnings, back to what God sought for us. Vayivra Elohim et ha'adam b'tzalmo. God created the human being in God's image. And by doing so, we can engage in repairing the world within, the microcosm of the human soul. This is no easy task, and I toil beside you. But as the American naturalist John Muir said, we find in the fields of nature no place that is blank or barren. Every spot on land or sea is covered with harvests, and these harvests are always ripe and ready to be gathered, and no toiler is ever underpaid. Please join me in Kaddish de Rabbanan. Yiskadav v'yiskadash shemei rabbah, ba'alma divrach chirusei, v'yamlik malchusei, v'chayachon uv'yomechon uv'chaye dekol beis Yisrael, ba'gala uv'izman kariv v'yimaru, amen. Yehei shmei rabbah mevarach leolam u'olamei almaya. Yisbarach v'yishtabach v'yispoar v'yisroman v'yisnasei, v'yishadar v'yishalei, V'yishalal, Shemei D'Kudashah, B'rechu, Le'ela min kol birchasa v'shirasa, tush b'chasa v'nechamasa, da'amiran be'alma v'yimaru, Amen. Al Yisrael ve'al Rabbanan, ve'al Talmidehon, ve'al kol Talmidei Salmidehon, ve'al kol man de'askim be'oraisa, di ve'asra v'hadin, ve'di ve'chol asar ve'asar, Yehei lahon ulachon, shalom rabba, china v'chista v'rachame, v'chaye ariche, umzone reviche, ufarkana min kodem la'avohon, di vishmaya v'yimaru, amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya, v'chaim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, v'yimaru, amen. Oseh shalom bin Romav, hu Yaseh v'rachamav shalom, aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, v'yimaru, amen.